Hey everyone and welcome to this Python tutorial for beginners. In this video, we're going to learn what Python is, why you should learn it, and how to set it up on your computer. So you can start writing Python programs today, whether you're a complete beginner or have some coding experience. This video will guide you step by step through everything you need to know to get started. Let's dive in. Let's start by understanding what Python is. Python is a high-level, interpreted programming language created by Guido van Rossum and first released in 1991. Over the years, it has become one of the most popular programming languages in the world. So what makes Python special? Well, Python is known for its simplicity and readability. It's often called a beginner friendly language because the syntax or the way it's written is easy to understand, even if you've never coded before. You don't need to worry too much about complicated syntax or rules like you do in other programming languages. Another reason why Python is so popular is that it is versatile. You can use it for web development, data analysis, machine learning, for automation, and even also for game development. Large companies like Google, Netflix, and Instagram all use Python. It's also the language of choice for data scientists and AI developers, making it one of the most in demand programming languages. Key points to emphasize. First, it is simple and readable syntax. Second, it is used in many fields like web development, data science, artificial intelligence, and many more. Third, for large community and many learning resources. Now, let's move on to how you can set Python up on your machine. Before we write any Python code, we need to install Python, whether you're on Windows, Mac, or Linux. The steps are pretty straightforward. Let's start with Windows. Go to the official website python.org and click on the Downloads tab. Python will automatically detect your operating system, so just click the big yellow button that says Download Python version number. For this video, we'll be using Python 3. Always make sure you're downloading the latest version of Python 3, as Python 2 is outdated. Once the installer finishes downloading, open it. A key step here is to make sure you check the box that says Add Python the path before you click Install. This makes it easier to run Python from the command line later. After the installation completes, open your command prompt or terminal and type Python version. This command should return the version of Python you just installed. If you see something like Python 3.x.x, congratulations, Python is successfully installed on your machine. Follow similar steps if you are using Mac or Linux, and comment for any installation guides specific to your system if you encounter any issues. Now that Python is installed, let's talk about where you'll write your Python code. This is where an IDE or integrated development environment comes in. An IDE is a software application that provides tools to make writing and running code easier. Python comes with IDE pre-installed, a very simple IDE designed for beginners. It's lightweight and easy to use, but it doesn't have all the features advanced users might want. Visual Studio Code or VS Code is one of the most popular code editors in the world. It is free, highly customizable, and has a ton of extensions for Python that help with debugging, code formatting, and much more. PyCharm is a professional IDE that comes in two versions, a free community version and a paid professional version. It is designed specifically for Python and has great features like code refactoring, debugging, and testing tools. If you are just getting started, I recommend starting with either IDLE or VS Code. PyCharm is fantastic but might be a little overwhelming for complete beginners. Alright, we have installed Python, chosen our IDE. Now let's write our first Python program. It is tradition that the first program you write in any programming language is one that prints hello world to the screen. Let's open your IDE. I will use VS Code for this example. Once it is open, create a new file and save it with the .py extension. I will name my file hello.py. Inside the file, type the following: print hello world. This is one line of Python code, and it simply tells the computer to print the text hello world to the console. Now, how do we run this program? In VS Code, you can right-click the file and select Run Python file, or you can run it from the terminal by navigating to the folder where the file is saved and typing python hello.py. After hitting enter, you should see the words Hello World appear on the screen. That's it. You've just written your first Python program. To quickly recap what we've covered today, we started by learning what Python is and why it is such a popular programming language. We installed Python step by step and made sure it is working. We talked about different types. You can use any one to write Python code like VS Code and PyCharm. And finally, we wrote and run our first Python program. In the next video, we'll dive deeper into Python's variables and data types. But for now, take a moment to experiment with writing and running Python code. The more you practice, the more comfortable you'll get. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more Python tutorials. Welcome back to our Python series. In today's video, we'll be diving deep into some of the fundamental building blocks of Python variables and data types. These are critical concepts because they lay the foundation for everything you'll be doing in Python. Understanding them will make coding smoother and help you write clean and efficient code. By the end of this video, you'll be able to create and use variables, understand different data types in Python, and even interact with the user using input and output functions. So let's get started. Let's begin by discussing variables. In programming, a variable is essentially a container for storing data values. Think of it as a label box in which you can place different types of items. These items can be numbers, text, or even more complex data structures. The beauty of variables is that they let us store information that we can use and manipulate later in our program. In Python, creating a variable is as simple as assigning a value to a name. Let me show you an example. Name is equal to Arjun. Age is equal to 35. Height is equal to 6.5. Here we have created three variables. Name stores a string value Arjun. Age stores an integer value 25. Height stores a float value 5.6. The important thing to note is that in Python, we don't need to explicitly declare the type of the variable like you do in some other languages. Python automatically understands what type of data you're assigning based on the value. So the conclusion we got. First, variable is a way to store data. Second, you assign values using equal to sign. Third, Python automatically detects the data type based on the value you assign. Now that we've seen how to create variables, let's explore some common data types in Python. Python has several built-in data types, but for now we'll focus on four fundamental ones. First is integers. Integers are whole numbers without any decimal points. They can be positive or negative. For example, num1 equal to 10 and num2 equal to minus 20. Here, num1 is a positive integer and num2 is a negative integer. Second is float. Floats represent numbers with decimal points. You use them when precision matters. For example, pi is equal to 19.99 and pi is equal to 3.14159. Notice the difference between integers and floats. Integers don't have decimal points, while floats do. Third is strings. Strings are sequences of characters enclosed in single or double quotes. You use strings to represent text, for example. Greeting is equal to hello world. In this case, the variable greeting stores a string value. Strings can contain letters, numbers, and even symbols. Fourth is Boolean. Booleans are special data types that represent two values, true or false. These are useful in decision making where a condition is either true or false. Here's an example. Is raining equal to true and is sunny equal to false? When you're working with variables, it's important to know what kind of data you're dealing with because different operations can be applied to different types. Now, let's take a closer look at assigning values to variables in Python. As we saw earlier, assigning a value is as simple as using the equal to sign. Let me show you a few more examples to reinforce this. User name equal to John Doe. User age equal to 30. User balance equal to 100.75 and is active equal to true. In the above code, we assign user name to a string, user age to an integer, user balance to a float and is active to a boolean. Python allows us to change the values of these variables at any time. For instance, user age equal to 31 and user balance equal to user balance minus 50.25. Now, user age has been updated to 31 and we have reduced user balance by 50.25, updating its value accordingly. This flexibility is one of Python's strengths. You can manipulate these variables in any way you want depending on the logic of your program. Next, talk about input and output in Python. This is how we interact with the user either by showing information or by taking input from them. Let's start with the print function. This is the simplest way to display information to the user. For example, print welcome to Python programming. This will output the text welcome to Python programming to the screen. But what if we want to get input from the user? That's where the input function comes in. The input function allows us to take user input as a string. Here's an example. Name equal to input what is your name? Print hello with the variable name and exclamation mark. When you run this code, Python will ask the user to input their name. Whatever they type will be stored in the name variable and then we use print to greet them by name. Let's walk through another example where we ask the user for their age and calculate how old they will be in 5 years. Age equal to input how old are you? Age in 5 years equal to int age plus 5. Print in 5 years you will be plus variable string age in 5 years plus years old. In this example, first we take the user's age as input. Then we convert the input which is a string to an integer using int function. And after that we add 5 to their current age. And then we finally print the result converting the integer back to a string using string function for display. It's important to remember that input always returns the value as a string. So we often need to convert it using functions like int or float to do calculations. Alright, let's quickly recap what we have covered today. First, we learned what variables are and how to use them to store data. Second, we learned about different data types in Python, including integers, floats, strings, and booleans. And after that, we learned how to assign values to variables. And in last, we learned about how to interact with users using print and input functions. In the next video, we'll dive even deeper into working with operators and basics of arithmetic, the backbone of making decisions in Python programs. But before that, take some time to practice creating variables, experimenting with different data types and interacting with the user using input and output functions. This hands-on experience will help solidify the concepts we covered today. Thanks for watching, and if you found this helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe for more Python tutorials. Welcome back to the Python series. In today's video, we're going to take a closer look at one of the most important aspects of programming, that is arithmetic and operators. These are the building blocks of making calculations and comparisons in any program. By the end of this video, you'll be comfortable using Python to perform basic arithmetic, compare values, and use more advanced operations like modulus and exponentiation. This lesson is essential because operators allow you to manipulate data and build the logic that powers your program. So let's dive in. But let's start with the basics arithmetic operations. These are the common mathematical operations we use every day like addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. In Python, arithmetic operations are straightforward and the symbols are intuitive. First is addition operator. Using this operator, we can add two numbers. Let me show you an example. First type result equal to 5, then type addition operator sign 3. And in the next line type print result. Here we are adding 5 and 3 and the result is 8. Simple, right? Second is subtraction. It works similarly like addition. You just use the subtract symbol. Result equal to 10 subtract 4 and then type print result. In this example, 10 minus 4 gives us 6. Third is multiplication. Multiplication uses the asterisk. For example, result equal to 7 multiply 3 and then type print result. Fourth is division. Division is done using the slash symbol. Here's an example. Result equal to 10 divided by 2 and then type print result. Notice that Python returns the result as a float, even though the division is exact. When dividing in Python, you'll always get a float, even if the result is a whole number. This is important when performing further calculations, so always be mindful of the data type returned. But these are the 4 basic arithmetic operations and you'll use them constantly in your programs. Let's move on to comparison operators. Now that we know how to perform arithmetic, let's talk about comparing values using comparison operators. These are used to compare two values and return either true or false, which is helpful for decision making in your programs. Here are the common comparison operators in Python. First is greater than operator. This operator checks if the value on the left is greater than the value on the right. For example, type print 7 is greater than 3. Since 7 is greater than 3, Python returns true. Second is less than. This checks if the value on the left is smaller than the value on the right. For example, print 5 is less than 10. Python returns true because 5 is less than 10. Third is equal to. This checks if two values are equal. We use the double equal sign. For example, print 4 is equal to 4. If both values are the same, Python returns true. Fourth is not equal to. This checks if two values are not equal. For example, print 7 is not equal to 5. Since 7 is not equal to 5, Python returns true. Fifth is greater than or equal to. This checks if the value on the left is greater than or equal to the value on the right. Last is less than or equal to, similar to the previous operator, but checks if the left value is less than or equal to the right. For example, type print 3 is less than or equal to 5. Comparison operators are extremely useful when you need to make decisions in your program, such as deciding if one value is larger or smaller than another. Combined with conditional statements, they allow you to control the flow of your program. Next, let's talk about logical operators. These operators are used to combine comparison statements and return a true or false result based on the conditions. Python has 3 logical operators, that is AND, OR, and NOT. First is AND operator. The AND operator returns true if both conditions are true. Here's an example. X equal to 5, then print x is greater than 3 and x is less than 10. In this case, both conditions x greater than 3 and x less than 10 are true. So Python returns true. Second is OR operator. The OR operator returns true if at least one of the conditions is true. For example, first type x equal to 5, then type print x less than 3 or x greater than 2. Here x less than 3 is false, but x greater than 2 is true. So the overall result is true. Third is NOT operator. The NOT operator reverses the result of a condition. For example, x is equal to 5. Type print not x greater than 3. In this case, x greater than 3 is true, but because of the NOT operator, Python returns false. Let's walk through a scenario where you might use these operators. Say you're building a simple login system and want to check if the user's input is valid. You could combine logical operators like this. Username equal to admin and password equal to 1234. If username equal to admin and password equal to 1234, then print access granted, else print access denied. Here the user will only be granted access if both the username and password are correct. This is a practical example of using and to check multiple conditions at once. Now, let's take a step further and explore some advanced arithmetic operators that are extremely useful in certain scenarios. First is modulus. The modulus operator returns the remainder of a division. For example, result equal to 10 modulus 3, then print result. Here, when you divide 10 by 3, the remainder is 1. A real world use case for modulus might be when you want to check if a number is even or odd. If the number modulo 2 equals 0, the number is even. First take number equal to 6. Then if number modulus 2 equal to 0, print even, else print odd. Second is floor division. Floor division divides two numbers and rounds down to the nearest whole number. Result equal to 10 floor division 3, then print result. In this example, 10 divided by 3 equals 3.333, but Python rounds it down to 3 using floor division. Third is exponentiation. Exponentiation is used to raise a number to the power of another number. Result equal to 2 exponentiation 3, then print result. Here we are raising 2 to the power of 3, which gives us 8. Let's quickly recap what we've learned today. We started with basic arithmetic operators addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. Then we covered comparison operators like greater than, less than, and equal to. We explored logical operators like and or and not to combine conditions. Finally, we dive into advanced arithmetic with modulus, floor division, and exponentiation. These operators form the foundation for many programming tasks, from calculations to decision making. In the next video, we'll explore working with strings, which will take your programs to the next level. As always, practice what you've learned today by writing your own Python scripts and playing around with different operators. Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Welcome back to our Python series. In today's video, we'll be focusing on one of the most essential data types in programming, that is strings. Strings allow you to work with text, whether it's names, messages, or any other kind of text-based data. By the end of this video, you'll be able to create strings, manipulate them using different operations and methods, and format them in flexible ways. Strings are at the heart of most applications, so mastering them will give you a strong foundation for working with data. Let's jump in. First, let's start with the basics. What are strings? In Python, a string is a sequence of characters and we use them to represent text. You can create a string by enclosing characters in either single quotes or double quotes. Both of these work the same way in Python and you can choose whichever you prefer. Here's an example using single quotes. Greeting equal to hello world. Using double quotes, farewell equal to goodbye. Both of these are valid ways to create strings. One key point to remember: if your string contains a single quote, you might want to use double quotes around the string and vice versa to avoid errors. For example, sentence "It's a beautiful day." If you use single quotes around that, Python would get confused because it wouldn't know where the string ends. So keep this in mind when choosing between single and double quotes. Now that we know how to create strings, let's explore some basic string operations. First is concatenation. Concatenation is simply the process of combining two or more strings together. In Python, you can concatenate strings using the addition operator. Here's an example. First name equal to John and last name equal to Doe, then full name equal to first name plus space plus name, then print full name. In this example, we're combining the first name, a space, and the last name to form the full name. Second is repetition. You can repeat a string multiple times using the asterisk operator. For example, laughter equal to ha multiply 3, then print laughter. This repeats the string ha 3 times, creating haha. Third is accessing string characters. Strings in Python are indexed, meaning each character has a position or index starting from 0. You can access individual characters using square brackets. For example, word equal to Python, then print word 0 and print word 5. In this example, word 0 gives us the first character P and word 5 gives us the last character N. Remember that Python uses zero-based indexing. So the first character of a string is at index 0, the second at index 1 and so on. Python provides several built-in methods to manipulate strings. These methods are really powerful and make working with text super easy. Let's go over some of the most commonly used string methods. Upper and lower methods. These methods convert a string to uppercase or lowercase. Text hello world, then print text dot upper and print text dot lower. Strip method. The strip method removes any white space from the beginning and end of the string. This is useful when dealing with user input. Text equal to hello world. Then print text dot strip. Replace method. The replace method replaces a specified substring with another substring. Here's an example. Text equal to I love apples, then print text dot replace apples, bananas. Split method. The split method splits a string into a list of substrings based on a specified delimiter. By default, it splits on spaces. Text equal to hello world and words equal to text dot split. Join method. The join method is the opposite of split method. It joins elements of a list into a single string. Words equal to hello world and sentence equal to dot join words, then print sentence. String methods are incredibly useful for cleaning, formatting, and transforming text data. Practice using these to get comfortable manipulating strings. Next, talk about string formatting. Formatting allows you to embed variables or expressions inside a string in a readable and flexible way. Python provides several ways to format strings, and we'll cover three popular ones: F strings, the format method, and the percent operator. F strings. F strings are the most modern and preferred way to format strings in Python. You simply prefix the string with an F, and then you can include variables or expressions inside curly braces. Name equal to Alice, age equal to 30. Then printf my name is curly braces name and I am curly braces age years old or. The output will be my name is Alice and I am 30 years old. With F strings, you can also perform expressions directly inside the curly braces. Format method. The format method works similarly, but it's a bit more verbose. You use placeholders and call the format method with the values to replace the placeholders. Name Bob. Age 25. Print my name is curly braces and I am curly braces years old. Format name, comma age. The output will be my name is Bob and I am 25 years old. The percent operator. The percent operator is an older method for formatting strings, and while it's less common nowadays, you might still see it in older code. Name equal to Charlie. Age equal to 28. Print my name is percent %s and I am percent %d years old, percent name, comma age. Here percent %s is used for strings and percent %d is used for integers. This method is less flexible than def strings or format, but it's good to be familiar with it. Let's see a real-world example where you might use string formatting. Say you want to print a message displaying someone's name, age, and favorite color. Name equal to Sarah. Age equal to 27. Color equal to blue. Printf curly braces name is curly braces age years old and loves the color curly braces color. Using F strings, this is quick and easy to do. And the result is Sarah is 27 years old and loves the color blue. Alright, let's quickly recap what we covered today. We learned about the basics of creating strings and using single versus double quotes, string operations like concatenation, repetition, and accessing characters. Useful string methods such as upper, lower, strip, and replace. String formatting using F strings, the format method, and the percent operator. Understanding and working with strings is fundamental to many aspects of programming, especially when dealing with user input files or any text data. Be sure to practice what we've covered today by experimenting with string operations and methods in your own code. In the next video, we'll dive into lists, which will help you manipulate collections of data in Python. Thanks for watching and don't forget to like, subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next video. Hello everyone and welcome back to our Python series. Today we're going to dive into one of the most important data types in Python, that is lists. Lists are incredibly versatile and are used to store and manage collections of data. By the end of this video, you'll understand what lists are, how to create and modify them, and how to use various built-in list methods. Lists are fundamental for working with groups of data, so it's crucial to get comfortable with them early on. Let's get started. Let's begin with the basics. What exactly is a list? In Python, a list is a collection of items that are ordered and changeable. Think of it as a container that can hold multiple pieces of information in one place. A list can contain numbers, strings, other lists, or a mix of different data types. Lists are defined by placing items inside square brackets separated by commas. Here's a simple example of a list containing different types of data. My list square bracket 1, apple 3.14, true, then print my list. In this example, my list contains an integer 1, a string apple, a floating point number 3.14, and a boolean true. List can store any combination of data types. Now that we understand what a list is, let's go over how to create and access the elements within a list. Creating a list. To create a list, we just use square brackets with items separated by commas. Here's a simple example. Fruits equal to square bracket apple, banana, cherry. Then print fruits. Here we have a list of strings with 3 fruits. Indexing. Lists are indexed, which means each item in the list has a specific position. Python uses zero-based indexing. So the first item is at index 0, the second index 1, and so on. Print fruits 0 and print fruits 2. Remember, if you try to access an index that doesn't exist, Python will throw an index error, so be careful when working with list indices. Slicing. Slicing allows us to access a range of elements within a list. We can specify a start and an index separated by a colon to get a sublist. Print fruits 0, 2. Here we're slicing from index 0 to 2 but excluding 2, which gives us the first 2 items. Updating list elements. Lists are mutable, which means we can change the elements after the list is created. To do this, we simply assign a new value to the desired index. Fruits 1 equal to blueberry, then print fruits. In this example, we replace banana with blueberry. Slicing and updating are great ways to customize lists to fit your program's needs. Let's now move on to some of the most useful built-in methods for working with lists. Python provides a lot of methods that make it easy to manipulate lists. Let's go over some of the most commonly used ones. Append method. The append method allows you to add an item to the end of the list. Fruits.append orange, then print fruits. This is a quick way to add new elements without modifying any existing ones. Remove method. The remove method lets you remove a specific item from the list by its value. Fruits.remove blueberry, then print fruits. Here blueberry is removed from the list. Sort method. The sort method sorts a list in ascending order. This works with lists of numbers or strings. Numbers equal to square bracket 3, 1, 4, 2. Type numbers dot sort, then print numbers. You can also sort in descending order by passing reverse equal to true. Numbers dot sort reverse equal to true, then print numbers. Reverse method. The reverse method reverses the order of items in the list. Numbers dot reverse, then print numbers. Insert method. The insert method allows you to add an item at a specific index. Fruits.insert 1, kiwi, then print fruits. Pop method. The pop method removes the last item in the list and returns it. If you provide an index, it will remove the item at that index. Last fruit equal to fruits.pop. Then print last fruit and print fruits. These list methods are powerful tools that give you control over how your data is organized and managed. Practice these to get familiar with how they work. Finally, let's look at how we can use loops to iterate over items in a list. This is extremely useful for processing or analyzing each element individually. Using for loop, the most common way to loop through a list is by using a for loop. It's for fruit in fruits. Then print fruit. This will print each fruit in the list on a new line. Using range and len function. Sometimes we may want to access the index of each item in the list. We can do this by combining range with len. For I in range, len fruits colon print f the fruit at index size fruits I. In this loop, I is the index and fruits I gives us the item at that index. Using while loops. Although less common, you can also use a while loop to iterate over a list. I equal to 0. While I is less than len fruits colon print fruits I plus equal to 1. Here we manually increase the index I in each iteration until it reaches the end of the list. Using loops is essential when working with lists because it lets you apply operations to every item efficiently. Try combining loops with list methods like append or pop for more complex tasks. Alright, let's quickly recap what we covered today. We talked about what a list is and how to create one, accessing and updating lists using indexing and slicing, several powerful list methods like append, remove, sort, and reverse, looping through lists using for loops, while loops, and range. Lists are one of the most versatile and frequently used data structures in Python, and mastering them will make many programming tasks much easier. Be sure to practice creating, modifying, and iterating through lists to get comfortable with these concepts. In our next video, we'll explore about control flow if-else statements in Python. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss it. Thanks for watching and happy coding. Hello everyone and welcome back to our Python series. In today's video, we're exploring an essential programming concept, control flow with if-else statements. Control flow allows us to make decisions in our code. Imagine you're building an app and want it to react differently depending on user actions or conditions. This is where conditional statements come into play. By the end of this video, you'll be able to use if and else statements, understand comparison operators, and nest conditions to make more complex decisions. Let's dive in. Let's start by understanding what conditional statements are and why they're so important. In programming, we often need to make decisions. For example, if a user's score is above a certain threshold, we might want to congratulate them. Or if a customer's age is below 18. We might restrict access to certain features. This is what we call control flow. In Python, control flow is handled by if-else statements. They allow our code to execute different blocks of code based on certain conditions, making our programs more dynamic and responsive. Example. To illustrate, imagine we want to print different messages depending on whether it's morning or evening. We use a simple conditional statement here to check the time. Time of day equal to morning. If time of day equal to morning, print good morning, else print good evening. In this code, Python checks if time of day is equal to morning. If it is, it prints good morning. Otherwise, it prints good evening. This is the foundation of control flow, making decisions based on conditions. Now, let's break down the main parts of Python's conditional statements if, elif, and else. If statement. The if statement allows us to test a specific condition. If the condition evaluates as true, Python executes the code within that block. Here's a simple example. Score equal to 85. If score is greater than 70, then print you passed. In this case, Python checks if score is greater than 70. Since it is, it prints you passed. Elif statement. What if we want to add more conditions? That's where elif comes in. Elif stands for else if and it lets us test multiple conditions in sequence. Let's extend our example. If score is greater than 90, then print excellent. Elif score greater than 70, print good job, else print keep trying. Here, Python checks the first condition score greater than 90. If that's false, it moves to the elif condition score greater than 70. Since this condition is true, it prints good job and skips the else block. Else statement. Finally, the else statement captures any cases where none of the previous conditions are true. Think of it as a default action. Score equal to 65. If score greater than 90, then print excellent, and if score greater than 70, print good job, else print keep trying. Here, neither of the conditions is met, so Python goes to the else block and prints keep trying. To make our conditional statements work, we use comparison operators. These operators compare values and return either true or false. Let's review the main comparison operators used in Python. First is greater than. It checks if one value is greater than another. Age equal to 20. If age greater than 18, then print you are an adult. Second is less than. It checks if one value is less than another. Temperature equal to 15. If temperature less than 20, then print it's a bit chilly. Third is equal to. It checks if two values are the same. Color equal to red. If color equal to red, then print stop. Fourth is not equal to. It checks if two values are not the same. Light equal to green. If light not equal to red, then print you may go. Fifth is greater than or equal to, and less than or equal to. These check if one value is greater than or equal to or less than or equal to another. Score equal to 90. If score greater than or equal to 80, then print good job. Using these operators, we can create sophisticated conditional statements based on the relationships between values. Now let's talk about nested conditions. These are conditions placed within other conditions. Nested conditions are useful when you need to check multiple layers of criteria. For example, let's say we're building a simple program to check a user's age and their membership status. Age equal to 22, member equal to true. If age greater than or equal to 18, if he is a member. Then print you have access to the premium lounge. Else print you have access to the general area. Else print you are not allowed access. In this example, Python first checks if the age is greater than or equal to 18. If that's true, it moves to the nested if statement to check if member is true. Based on the result, it then prints either you have access to the premium lounge or you have access to the general area. If the user is under 18, Python skips the nested conditions entirely and goes to the else block, printing you are not allowed access. Let's put everything we've learned together with a comprehensive example. Imagine you're creating a simple program to recommend movies based on age and genre preference. Age equal to int input, enter your age, genre equal to input, do you prefer action or comedy movies? Dot lower, if age greater than or equal to 18 and if genre equal to action, print, we recommend the latest action movie. Elif, genre equal to comedy, then print check out the new comedy movie, else print sorry, we have no recommendations for that genre. Else if genre equal to action, then print we recommend a family-friendly action movie. If genre equal to comedy, then print check out a fun, animated comedy. Else print sorry, we have no recommendations for that genre. Explanation first, we ask the user for their age and genre preference. Then we check if the user is 18 or older. If they are, we recommend a movie based on their preferred genre. Or if they are younger than 18, we recommend a family-friendly version instead. This example demonstrates if elif, else comparison operators and nested conditions, making it a great way to practice conditional statements in Python. To recap, today we learned about conditional statements and how they allow us to make decisions in code, the roles of if, elif, and else. Else, comparison operators and how they help us set conditions. Nested conditions, which allow us to add more complexity to our logic. These are powerful tools that will help you create dynamic programs. Practice combining these ideas to build real-world logic into your programs. In the next episode, we'll explore loops in Python which allow us to repeat actions in our code. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video. Hello everyone, welcome back to our Python series. Today we're moving into an essential concept in programming, that is loops. Loops allow us to run the same code multiple times, which is crucial for handling repetitive tasks without writing endless lines of code. In this video, we'll cover why loops are so important, how to use for and while loops in Python, and finally we'll look at break and continue statements, which let us control our loops in more precise ways. By the end, you'll be ready to write loops that make your code more efficient and elegant. Let's dive in. First, let's start by understanding why we need loops in programming. Imagine you want to print numbers from 1 to 10. You could write type print 1, then print 2 and print 3. But this is inefficient, and if we wanted to print up to 100 or 1000, it would be overwhelming. Loops solve this problem by allowing us to repeat code until a certain condition is met, making our code cleaner and more powerful. Example, let's use a simple loop to print numbers 1 to 5 in Python. For number in range 1, 6, then print number. Here we only needed 2 lines to print numbers from 1 to 5. The loop handles the repetition, so we don't have to write print each time. This is the power of loops. They let us repeat actions with minimal code. Let's dive deeper into the for loop. A for loop is ideal for iterating over a known sequence of items like a list or a string. The syntax looks like this. For item in sequence colon hashtag code to execute each time. The loop takes each item in the sequence and runs the code for each item one by one. Example with a list. Suppose we have a list of fruits and want to print each one. Fruits equal to apple, banana, cherry. For fruit in fruits, then print fruit. This loop will print each fruit one by one. Here, fruit is the variable that represents each item in the fruits list. As the loop runs, it takes on each value in the list. Example with a string. For loops also work with strings. Since a string is a sequence of characters, we can iterate over each character. Name equal to Python. For letter in name, print letter. This loop prints each letter of the word Python on a new line. Use for loops when you know how many times you need to repeat an action, like looping over items in a list or characters in a string. Next, let's talk about while loops. A while loop repeats code as long as a specified condition is true. Unlike a for loop, a while loop doesn't need a defined sequence. Instead, it relies on a condition that eventually becomes false to end the loop. The syntax is straightforward. While condition hashtag code to execute while the condition is true. Let's use a simple example. We'll start with a counter set to 1 and we'll print the counter value as long as it's less than or equal to 5. Counter equal to 1, while counter less than equal to 5, print counter, counter plus equal to 1. Here we initialize counter to 1 and with each loop iteration it increases by 1. The loop stops when counter reaches 6 because the condition counter less than equal to 5 becomes false. Infinite loops are quick warning if the condition in a while loop never becomes false. The loop will run forever. This is called an infinite loop. For example, if we forget to increment counter, counter equal to 1, while counter is less than or equal to 5, then print counter. To avoid infinite loops, always ensure your condition eventually becomes false. Use while loops when you want the loop to continue until a condition is met. Unlike for loops, you don't need to know the exact number of repetitions ahead of time. Now, let's explore ways to control loops more precisely using break and continue statements. These keywords allow us to interrupt or skip parts of the loop. Break statement. The break statement exits the loop immediately, even if the loop's condition hasn't finished. This is useful when you want to stop a loop based on a specific condition. Example with break. Suppose we want to print numbers from 1 to 5 but stop if the number is 3. For number in range 1, 6, if number equal to 3, break print number. This loop will print 1 and 2, Then stop when it reaches 3, skipping any numbers afterward. Continue statement. The continue statement is different. Instead of stopping the loop, it skips the current iteration and moves to the next one. This is useful when you want to avoid certain values but continue looping. Example with continue. Let's say we want to print numbers 1 to 5 but we want to skip 3. For number in range 1, 6. If number equal to 3, continue print number. This loop will print 1, 2, 4 and 5 but skip 3. Use break when you need to stop the loop completely and use continue when you just want to skip to the next iteration without stopping the loop. Let's put everything together with a complete example. Suppose we are building a program to display all the numbers from 1 to 10 but with these rules. If the number is 5, we stop the loop entirely. If the number is even, we skip it and continue with the next number. For number in range 1, 11. If number equal to 5, break if number modulus 2 equal to 0, continue print number. Explanation. We start a for loop that goes through numbers 1 to 10. The first if statement checks if the number is 5. If it is, the loop ends. The second if checks if the number is even using number modulus 2 equal to 0. If the number is even, it skips the current loop iteration with continue. This code will print 1, 3 and stop at 5, showing how break and continue work together with loops. To wrap up today's video, here's a quick summary. For loops, let us iterate over sequences, making them ideal for lists and strings. While loops repeat code based on a condition and they're flexible when you don't know exact number of iterations. Break and continue statements allow us to control loop execution more precisely by stopping or skipping iterations. Loops are invaluable tools in programming, making your code more efficient and flexible. Try creating your own loops using the examples we covered and experiment with different break and continue statements. In the next video, we'll explore functions which allow us to create reusable blocks of code to simplify our programs. Thanks for watching and see you in the next lesson. Hello everyone. Welcome back to our Python series. In today's video, we're going to explore a crucial topic in programming functions. Functions allow us to break down code into smaller, reusable pieces, making programs more organized and easier to manage. By the end, you'll have a solid understanding of how to write and use functions in Python. Let's dive in. So let's start with the basics. What is a function? A function is a reusable block of code that performs a specific task. Functions help us avoid repeating code and make it easier to manage complex programs. In Python, we define a function using the def keyword followed by the function's name, parentheses, and a colon. The code inside the function is indented just like in loops and conditional statements. Here's a basic example of defining and calling a function. Def greet parentheses colon print hello welcome to the Python tutorial, then call greet. Here we've defined a function named greet that simply prints a welcome message. We call the function by typing its name followed by parentheses like this greet. When we run this code, Python executes the code inside the function, printing our welcome message. Functions can contain any code calculations, print statements, loops, and so on. This makes them powerful tools for organizing code. Now, let's make our functions more flexible with parameters and return values. Parameters let us pass data into a function, allowing it to work with different inputs. In Python, parameters are defined inside the parentheses when you define a function. To illustrate, let's create a function that takes a name as input and prints a personalized greeting. Def greet name, then printf hello name. Welcome to the Python tutorial. After that, call greet Alice. Here, name is a parameter for our greet function. When we call greet Alice, it passes Alice into the function as the name parameter and we get the output hello Alice. Welcome to the Python tutorial. Parameters are placeholders that allow functions to operate on different data. Without them, we would need to create a separate function for each person. Now let's talk about return values. Why some functions like greet just print information, others need to return a result for later use. We use the return keyword to send data back to the calling code. Def add a comma b, then result equal to a plus b, return result. Sum value equal to add 5 comma 3. Print sum value. In this example, our function add takes two parameters a and b and returns their sum. The return statement sends result back to where the function was called and we store it in sum value. Then we print sum 8. Returning values is especially helpful when we want to store or further process the results of a function. Unlike print, which only displays information, return makes the data available for future operations. Python has many built-in functions such as print, len, and sum, which are ready-to-use functions that come with Python. These functions perform common tasks and save us the effort of writing basic code from scratch. However, user-defined functions like the ones we've been creating are custom functions that we write to handle specific tasks unique to our programs. User-defined functions allow us to build exactly what we need, even if it's not provided by a built-in function. Let's look at an example where we use both a built-in function and a user-defined function. Numbers equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, print total, sum numbers def multiply a, b, return a multiply b. Result equal to multiply 4, 5, then print product, result. In this code, we use Python's built-in sum function to add up the numbers in a list. Then we define a custom function multiply to calculate the product of two numbers. Built-in functions are convenient and quick to use. While user-defined functions give us control over specific tasks that Python doesn't handle directly. Both types of functions are essential for efficient programming. One of the biggest benefits of functions is reusability. When we create a function, we can call it multiple times with different values without having to rewrite the same code over and over again. This makes our programs much more organized and reduces errors. Imagine we want to calculate the area of a rectangle. Instead of writing the formula each time, we can create a function for it. Def calculate area width comma height. Return width multiply height. Area 1 equal to calculate area 5 comma 10. Area 2 equal to calculate area 3 comma 7. Print area 1, area 1. Print area 2, area 2, area 2. Here our function calculate area calculates the area based on width and height. We then use this function to find the area of two different rectangles without rewriting the formula. This is one of the biggest advantages of functions code. Reusability saves time and prevents repetition. When you find yourself writing similar code repeatedly, think about how you could use a function to make it reusable. Let's put everything we've learned about functions into a practical example. Imagine we're building a small program to convert temperatures from Celsius to Fahrenheit and vice versa. We'll create two functions, one for each conversion. Def Celsius to Fahrenheit Celsius. Return Celsius multiply 9 divided 5 plus 32. Def Fahrenheit to Celsius Fahrenheit. Return Fahrenheit minus 32 multiply 5 divided by 9. Temperature in Celsius equal to 25. Temperature in Fahrenheit equal to Celsius to Fahrenheit temperature in Celsius. Print F temperature in Celsius degree C is temperature in Fahrenheit degree F. Temperature in Fahrenheit equal to 77. Temperature in Celsius equal to Fahrenheit to Celsius temperature in Fahrenheit. Print F temperature in Fahrenheit degree F is temperature in Celsius degree C. We have two functions Celsius to Fahrenheit and Fahrenheit to Celsius. Each function performs a specific conversion and returns a result. By using these functions, we can quickly switch between Celsius and Fahrenheit without rewriting the conversion formula. This example demonstrates how functions make code reusable and modular. By defining functions for each task, we can build programs that are easy to understand, update, and expand. To wrap up today's video, let's review what we've covered. Functions are reusable blocks of code that perform specific tasks, helping us to organize and simplify our programs. Parameters let us pass data into functions, while return values allow functions to give data back. Python offers many built-in functions, but user-defined functions let us customize and solve unique problems. Functions enable code reusability, making our code easier to maintain and less error-prone. With this foundation in functions, you're well on your way to writing organized modular Python code. In our next video, we'll dive into dictionaries. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're going to dive into another essential data structure in Python: dictionaries. Dictionaries are incredibly powerful tools for managing data that's linked by associations like names with phone numbers, product codes with descriptions, and so on. This is an exciting topic because dictionaries help make your programs more organized and meaningful. So let's get started. So let's start with the basics. What is a dictionary in Python? A dictionary is a data structure that stores data in key value pairs. Each piece of data is assigned a unique identifier called a key, and the actual data, called a value, is linked to that key. We can think of it like a real dictionary, where each word, the key, is linked to its definition, the value. One of the main reasons to use dictionaries is that they allow us to store and quickly access data based on meaningful keys instead of just indexes. This makes them different from lists or tuples, which use numerical indexes. Here's just a simple example of a dictionary. Contacts equal to curly braces Alice 5555123 Bob 5555678 Carol 555555765. Then print contacts. In this code, we've created a dictionary called contacts with names as the keys and phone numbers as the values. Each key value pair is separated by a comma, and the entire dictionary is enclosed in curly braces. The output will be a structured set of name phone number pairs. This is much easier to understand than if we stored the same data in a list, right? Now that we know what dictionaries are, let's talk about creating them and accessing data from them. We define dictionaries with curly braces as we saw in the previous example. Each item consists of a key, a colon, and a value. Keys can be strings, numbers, or even tuples, but they must be unique within a dictionary. Let's break down creating and accessing dictionaries step by step. Product catalog equal to curly braces P001 laptop, P002 smartphone, P003 tablet. Then print product catalog. Here we've created a dictionary called product catalog where the product codes are keys and the product names are values. The structure is simple but very effective for storing data in a way that allows us to access products based on their codes. Uh, To retrieve data from a dictionary, we use keys inside square brackets. Let's try to access the value of a specific key in our product catalog dictionary. Product equal to product catalog P001. Then print product for code P001. Product. In this example, we access the value associated with the key P001, which returns laptop. If the key doesn't exist in the dictionary, Python will raise a key error. So it's always a good idea to make sure the key is valid or use safer methods like .get, which we'll cover shortly. Dictionaries come with several useful methods that help us interact with and manipulate the data. Let's go over some of the most commonly used dictionary methods. Keys method. The keys method returns all the keys in a dictionary as a special view object. This is helpful when you want to see what items are in the dictionary without the associated values. Print keys, product catalog dot keys. This will output the keys P001, P002, P003, giving us a view of all keys in the dictionary. This list can be useful for iterating over each item or for checking if a specific key exists. Values method. The values method returns all the values in the dictionary, which can be useful if we're only interested in the values without their associated keys. Print values, product catalog dot values. This method gives us dict values laptop, smartphone, tablet, displaying only the values stored in the dictionary. It's particularly handy for situations where we want to process or display all products in a catalog. Get method. Earlier, we saw that trying to access a key that doesn't exist can cause an error. The .get method allows us to retrieve a value for a key but won't throw an error if the key is missing. Instead, it returns none or a default value if we specify one. Print existing key, product catalog .get P001 and print non-existing key, product catalog .get P005, product not found. In this example, when we try to access the key P005, .get returns product not found instead of raising an error. This is helpful for handling cases where a key may or may not be present. Pop method. The pop method allows us to remove a specific item from the dictionary based on its key. It returns a remove value so you can confirm which item was deleted. Removed item equal to product catalog dot pop P003. No product found, print removed item. Removed item and print updated catalog, product catalog. This code removes the item with key P003 and returns tablet. Afterward, our dictionary no longer contains the key P003. .pop is a safe way to delete items because it also lets you specify a default message if the key doesn't exist. Now let's look at how dictionaries can be used in real-world applications. There are many cases where we can store related information with dictionaries, such as contact lists, product catalogs, and inventory systems. Imagine you want to store a contact list with names and phone numbers. This is a perfect use case for dictionaries. Contacts equal to John 5551234, Jane 55555555678, Doe 555585765. Or ring John's phone, contacts.getJohn. This code creates a contacts dictionary. By using .get, we access John's phone number 555551234. We could also add new contacts or delete them using dictionary methods. Let's return to our product catalog. Here we can imagine a simple catalog with product codes as keys and product names as values. We could even extend this to include prices or categories. Product catalog equal to P001 name laptop, price 999, P002 name smartphone, price 599, P003 name tablet, price 399. Print smartphone price, product catalog P002 price. Here we made each value in product catalog another dictionary that stores both the product name and its price. Now, we can access specific attributes like the price for each product. This structure can be very helpful for building complex systems like e-commerce platforms or inventory trackers. Today we covered the basics of dictionaries in Python, including how to create dictionaries using key-value pairs, accessing and updating dictionary data using helpful dictionary methods like keys, values, get and pop, and real-world scenarios where dictionaries are very useful, like contact lists and product catalogs. With this knowledge, you're ready to use dictionaries effectively in your projects. They offer flexibility and organization for data, making them invaluable tools for building scalable applications. In our next video, we'll continue exploring about file handling basics, so stay tuned. Thanks for watching and happy coding. Welcome back, everyone. In today's episode, we're diving into an essential part of Python programming: file handling. Whether you're developing an application that logs data, reading from files, or saving user information, knowing how to work with files is essential. This topic is highly practical, so I'll include examples throughout to make it easy to follow. Let's get started. So why is file handling so important? When we write code, we often work with data, whether it's user information, program logs, or data for analysis. To make this data usable between sessions, we need to store it somewhere. This is where file handling comes in. By learning how to read from and write to files, we can make our programs more powerful and persistent. For example, instead of having a program that resets every time you run it, you can save the data to a file, then load it again later. Let's jump into how we open and close files in Python. In Python, the first step to reading from or writing to a file is to open it. We do this using the open function. It's important to remember that once we're done working with a file, we need to close it to free up system resources. Not closing files can sometimes lead to issues in larger applications, so it's good practice to always close a file after opening it. File equal to openexample.txt are there, then print file open successfully. Here we use open function to open a file named example.txt. The R argument stands for read mode. If this file exists, it will open successfully, otherwise Python will raise an error. We'll get into error handling a bit later in the series, but for now, let's focus on the basics. After working with a file, it's crucial to close it. We can do this using the close method as shown below. File.close, then print file close successfully. By using file.close, we're telling Python to release the resources associated with the file. Now, the file is no longer accessible and we've completed the process cleanly. Another great way to handle files is with a with statement. This approach automatically closes the file after the code inside the with block has run, which can help prevent errors if you forget to close the file manually. With openexample.txt r as file, then print file open with statement. In this code, we don't need to call close explicitly. Once the code within the with block finishes, the file will close automatically. This is a safe and efficient way to handle files. Now that we know how to open and close files, let's move on to reading data from files. Reading data is very common, especially when we need to process input from a data file or a log file. Read method. The read method reads the entire content of the file at once and returns it as a single string. This is useful when you want to work with all of the file's data at once, but be cautious with large files as they can consume a lot of memory. With openexample.txt r as file content equal to file.read print file content. In this example, content will hold all of the text from example.txt. This method is straightforward and ideal for smaller files, where reading the entire content at once won't be an issue. Readline method. If you want to read a file line by line, the readlines method is helpful. This method returns each line in the file as an item in a list. It's particularly useful for looping through each line individually. With openexample.txt add as file lines equal to file.readlines. Print lines in the file for line in lines. Print line.strip. Here lines is a list where each item is a line from the file. Using strip removes any extra new line characters from each line. This way you can process each line individually, which is often helpful when working with structured data files. Besides reading, you may also need to write data to a file. Python offers methods to either override a file or add data to an existing file. Write method. The write method writes data to a file. If the file doesn't exist, it will create one. But be cautious if the file already exists and you open it in write mode, it will override the contents. With openexample.txt w as file.write hello. Python file handling print data written to file. In this code, example.txt is opened in w or write mode. We then write hello Python file handling to the file. After this, the file is automatically closed thanks to the with statement. If you open the file again, you'll notice the content has been replaced with the new text. This is perfect for cases when you want to clear the old data and start fresh. If you want to add data to an existing file without erasing its current contents, you can use the append mode indicated by A. This will add data to the end of the file rather than overwriting it. For example, with openexample.txt as file.write appending this line, print data appended to file. Here we open example.txt in append mode and add the line appending this line. Each time we run this code, a new line is added to the end of the file. To tie it all together, let's look at a practical example. Suppose we want to log user actions to a file. Each time a user performs an action, we'll log it with a timestamp. Import datetime log action. With open user log.txt as log file. Then timestamp equal to datetime.datetime.down logfiler.write f timestamp action n. Then type print action log action user login log action user updated profile. In this example, we create a log action function that takes a user action as a parameter. Each time the function is called, it opens user log.tsc in append mode, adds a timestamp, and logs the action over time. This will build a complete log of user actions with timestamps. This is an ideal use case for appending data to files. Today we covered the basics of file handling in Python, including why file handling is essential for managing data persistently, how to open and close files safely using open and close, reading data from files with read and read lines, writing data to files with .write, and appending data with append mode. With these skills, you're now able to read from and write to files effectively, which is crucial for many applications from data logging to creating persistent programs. Thanks for tuning in. In the next video, we'll study about error handling, so make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Happy coding! Hello everyone and welcome back. Today's video is all about an important topic in Python programming, that is error handling. Errors or exceptions are inevitable in programming, but with the right techniques we can handle them gracefully, making our programs more robust and user-friendly. By the end of this video, you'll have a strong foundation in handling errors so they don't crash your programs. Let's dive in. Let's start with a quick overview of what exceptions are in Python. Exceptions occur when there's an error that disrupts the normal flow of a program. For instance, if you try to divide 0 or access an element in a list that doesn't exist, Python will raise an exception. When an exception happens, Python halts the program and displays an error message. Example of an exception: print 10 divide by 0. If we try to run this code, we'll get a zero division error because dividing by 0 is undefined. Python stops and displays an error message, which can be frustrating for users. But with error handling, we can catch and manage these errors, allowing the program to continue running smoothly. Let's look at how to do that using try and except. In Python, we use try and except blocks to handle exceptions. When you place code inside a try block, Python will attempt to execute it. If an error occurs, the code in the except block will run instead, preventing the program from crashing. Let's go over an example to see this in action. Basic try and except example. Try print 10 divided by 0. Except 0 division error, print oops, you can't divide 0. In this code, we try to divide by 0 inside the try block. When Python encounters this error, it jumps to the except block, where we handle it by printing a message instead of stopping the program. You can use except to catch specific exceptions, making your code more robust and user-friendly. There are many types of exceptions in Python, each corresponding to a different kind of error. Here are a few of the most common ones. First is zero division error occurs when you try to divide by 0. Second is value error. Happens when you pass a value of the wrong type to a function. Third is index error raised when you try to access an index in a list that doesn't exist. Fourth is key error raised when you try to access a key that isn't in a dictionary. Let's look at examples of some of these common exceptions. Example of value error. Try num equal to int abc, except value error print oops, that's not a valid number. Here we're trying to convert the string abc into an integer, which isn't possible. This raises a value error. By using an except block, we can handle this error and display a friendly message instead. Example of index error. Try my list equal to 1, 2, 3, print my list 5 except index error print oops, index out of range. In this example, we're trying to access an index that's out of range in a list, causing an index error. By catching it, we prevent the program from crashing and provide a user-friendly message. Sometimes we want certain code to run regardless of whether an exception occurs or not. For this, Python provides a finally block. Code inside a finally block will always execute, even if there's an error in the try block. This is useful for closing files or releasing resources. Using finally example. Try file equal to open example.txt at content equal to file.read print content. Except file not found error print oops. File not found dot finally file dot close print file close by. Here we attempt to open a file and read its contents. If the file doesn't exist, a file not found error is raised. The finally block ensures the file is closed regardless of whether the try block succeeds or fails. This is very useful for cleaning up resources like files or database connections in real-world applications. We can also handle multiple exceptions in a single try block. To do this, we list different exceptions in separate except blocks, allowing us to customize how each error is handled. Multiple exceptions example. Try num equal to int input, enter a number print 10 divided by num, except value error print please enter a valid integer, except zero division error print sorry you can't divide by 0. In this code, the try block contains code that could raise both a value error and a zero division error. By having separate except blocks, we can provide specific messages for each error type. This approach makes our program more resilient and informative. In some cases, you might want to customize the error messages even further. You can use the except block along with the as keyword to capture the actual error message and display it. Custom error message example. Try num equal to int input, enter a number print 10 divided by num, except exception as e print if an error occurred e. Here, if any error occurs, it's captured as E, and we can print a custom error message that includes details about the error. This is a versatile approach that can be very useful, especially in debugging or logging errors in larger applications. Let's look at a practical example of how error handling can make a program more reliable. We'll build a simple calculator that takes two numbers from the user and divides them, handling errors like division by 0 and invalid input. Def save division, try num1 equal to float input, enter the first number. Num2 equal to float input, enter the second number. Result equal to num1 divided by num2 except 0 division error print error cannot divide by 0. Except value error print error please enter valid numbers. Else print result. Finally print end of calculation. Then call save division. In this example, we have a function save division that performs division and handles errors. If the user enters invalid data, like letters instead of numbers, a value error is raised and we display an error message. If they try to divide by 0, a zero division error is raised. The finally block runs at the end, letting the user know the calculation is complete. This makes our calculator more user-friendly and error-resistant. Let's quickly review what we covered today. We started by understanding what exceptions are and why they happen. We learned how to use try and except blocks to handle errors. We explored some common Python exceptions, including zero division error and value error. We saw how the finally block guarantees code execution, and we applied these concepts in a practical example. With these techniques, you can make your Python programs much more robust and user-friendly. Error handling is essential in building professional applications, so keep practicing these techniques in your projects. Thank you for joining, and I'll see you in the next video where we will make small Python projects.